Welcome to day 2 of the Net Zero Nuclear Summit here in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, proudly hosted by Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation and the World Nuclear Association. Yesterday, we heard from the leading voices across governments, industry, academia, and civil society about the challenge we have to decarbonize our energy systems. Today, we look forward to discussing how we are going to tackle this challenge head on and make sure the goal to triple global nuclear energy capacity by 2050 becomes a reality. Today is also a day to hear from our young people as COP28 has designated the 8th of December for youth. And we have some fantastic young individuals who are doing some fantastic work in their countries, across their governments and communities. Let's begin. I'd now like to welcome His Excellency Musabeh Al Kaabi, Executive Director, Low Carbon Solutions and International Growth from ADNOC, to the stage to share his leadership vision with David Victor, Professor of Innovation and Public Policy at the School of Global Policy and Strategy at UC San Diego.
Thank you, everyone, for being back this morning. We're not yet, with the two of us, in the youth segment of the program today, but I can assure you that we're going to have a phenomenally interesting conversation. So, Musabeh, it's terrific to have you on stage. You're with ADNOC, the state national oil company, but you run a specific division of the company. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you. It's truly an honor. Good morning, everyone. Truly an honor to be part of this conversation. And thanks for inviting me. I run the Low Carbon Solutions and International Growth for ADNOC. ADNOC has set a clear strategy in view of the energy transition going forward. We have identified that there is a requirement, of course, to decarbonize the energy of today while investing in the energies of tomorrow. What do we mean by decarbonizing the energy of today? Ensuring that every molecule produced in our operation has the lowest carbon intensity. And that's very important because we think as long as the world needs oil in the future, it should come from a low intensity production. And by the way, when you look at the IEA projection by 2050, of course, the renewables will play a big role. Nuclear definitely will play a big role. But also there is a sizable share of hydrocarbon in the system. So our task is to ensure that hydrocarbon demand in the future should come with the lowest carbon intensity. Also, we're investing in the energies of tomorrow. We are a shareholder of one of the leading renewable platforms globally called Masdar, the future energy company of Abu Dhabi. And the company is going through a very aggressive growth. Today, capacity of around 20 gigawatt, and we're building the capacity to 100 gigawatt by 2030. We're expanding in also carbon capture, we're expanding in hydrogen, and we will come to this, I think, later. But in a nutshell, decarbonizing the energy system of today and building and investing in the energies of tomorrow.
We'll come to hydrogen in just a second, but let me just ask you a little bit about this interesting title. Low carbon solutions. There are lots of oil and gas companies that have divisions of low carbon solutions. I believe you're the only one that has low carbon solutions and international growth. Is that telling us that essentially all international growth is going to be low carbon?
When you look at our international growth, our strategy is going to focus on natural gas because we believe that natural gas will play a big role in the energy transition and to achieve these targets, even including climate targets by 2050, definitely we need to expand more on natural gas and potentially offset coal power generation. International expansion also in a very critical sector, which is chemicals. And why chemicals is important? Because it's a material that we use it on a daily basis. But also as an integrated energy player, we have a responsibility to accelerate the decarbonization of other sectors. If you look at any economy, be it the US economy, UAE, Japan, Germany, you have 5 or 6 key sectors that will require decarbonization. Mm-hmm. Cement, steel, aluminum, chemicals, power, and oil and gas, of course, operation. So we are working with other sectors as well to ensure that we provide them with the proper solutions to decarbonize their operation.
There's been a lot of criticism of the role of carbon capture and storage in the oil and gas industry. It sounds like from your answer, that criticism misses the mark because its crucial role in decarbonizing all these other sectors. Is that more or less correct?
Definitely, and if you look at, again, the IEA projection by 2050, I don't see, honestly, how we can achieve net zeros without embracing nuclear, guys, and without embracing carbon capture. Because if the ultimate target is to remove carbon, we need to embrace carbon capture.
Let me add that today's meeting is the second day of 2. Yesterday we began with a discussion about scaling clean electrons and molecules. How do you think about the balance between electrons and molecules? There's always a lot of discussion about electricity, clean electricity, and particularly the role of nuclear in this. Are molecules equally important, more important because of the kind of business that you're in? How should we think about that?
I think our approach is all of the above. We need definitely molecules and electrons. As I highlighted, I think on the renewable side, we're expanding on the electron side. But on the low carbon solutions, we're making a good progress with the molecules, especially hydrogen. We believe that hydrogen would have or will have a sizable share of decarbonizing and achieving net zero targets by 2050 or earlier. And there are few enablers for hydrogen, for example, to be pushed in the system. One of them is government policies, and we've seen in the US with the introduction of the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA. We have seen also ETS system. We have seen the Asians are, trying to push the CFDs, contract for difference system. There are a lot of, or few government policies that would definitely help pushing the likes of hydrogen and low carbon solutions. The technology is going to play a big role. Mm-hmm. And I remain very optimistic when it comes to technology because I remember the first solar project in Abu Dhabi was in 2008. The cost at that time was around 46 cents per kilowatt hour. The last project awarded in Abu Dhabi came at a cost, which is a few months back, came at a cost of 1.4 cents per kilowatt hour. So significant drop in the cost of solar. In the hydrogen space, although it is still a challenge, but I believe that a decent drop in the cost of electrolyzers would enable hydrogen to play a bigger role in securing the energies of tomorrow.
What I'm seeing in the space is that everyone's focused on electrolyzers and they're not focused on the bigger picture, balance of system and so on. And when you look at that, green hydrogen projects, for example, are actually very, very expensive across the board. And so I'm just curious, from a technology perspective, you're a technologist. You're working on hydrogen as clean molecules, you're working on methanol, you're working on ammonia. What looks really promising from your perspective in terms of clean molecules?
Well, let me share one I think ENIC participated in the first climate tech we hosted in Abu Dhabi in May of this year. And it was unbelievable when you see the startup companies and the level of innovation coming in the system. So in the venture space, for example, you see that, especially in the energy transition, startup companies, they had like a modest number, but just in the last few years, you see them going almost astronomical. So there is a lot of innovation happening in the energy transition. We in ADNOC are embracing we're testing, piloting a lot of technologies. So we're running let me highlight some of the decarbonization or carbon capture. We're running a DAC unit, direct air capture, and CO2 mineralization project in Fujairah. We are running now a project or a pilot in Abu Dhabi where we capture CO2 and put it in a saline aquifer. We have realized we have definitely a storage capacity to accommodate millions and millions of CO2, so we're testing that concept. We're testing a new emerging technology in the carbon capture to minimize and reduce the cost. So we have tested also something very interesting, and we announced it a few days back, utilizing geothermal instead of power generation. Because of the geology here in this region, we decided to utilize it for district cooling. And believe me, sometimes when you bring these ideas in the system, it is extremely difficult for traditional organizations to accept new ways of doing things. So we had to almost bulldoze our way to get it approved. And today, it's up and running. It is in Masdar City. I don't know how many of you have been to Masdar City, but today, Masdar City, 10% of their district cooling is supplied by geothermal. So in the technology, it is, I think, we're at the verge of almost major disruption. And why I'm saying this, because if you combine human innovation and turbocharge it with AI, I think there is a huge potential to push some of these, improve the efficiencies, but push some of these technologies and accelerate them.
I want to talk about disruption in just a moment, but just one quick question on the nuclear part of this. A lot of people in the audience from the nuclear business.
They are the smart people, of course.
They say you're the smart one. When they call you tomorrow to talk about new business, should they be looking at high temperature, heat applications of nuclear for molecules, new things in petchem? Obviously, there's a nuclear electric part of this. You're in the middle of it. You're using electricity from the Emirati grid. You're electrifying operations. That's lowering carbon intensity. But what's the next frontier for nuclear projects that could be in your business?
I think for the nuclear, I would like, first of all, to thank ENIC and the team here, because the fact that I am achieving the lowest carbon intensity among my peers goes to the nuclear program of the UAE. So great achievement, thank you. You're making my life easier. When you look at my decarbonization, two big levers of how to achieve my targets. One of them is electrification. And that's where we completely connected our onshore operation now with the grid and tap into nuclear and solar. And we are in the process of connecting our offshore operation to the national grid. So going forward, of course, I need further decarbonization. I need further carbon intensity reduction, where I already announced 25% by 2030. 2030 is almost tomorrow. So when you look at the nuclear power generation, the challenge is if I can get a reliable and a cost-effective energy, definitely that's the way, and it will help me decarbonize. And I know that in this industry, there is a lot of discussion around SMRs. In fact, sometimes people use their imagination and try to explore nuclear fusion. By the way, climate tech, we had a few startup companies on the nuclear fusion. I know that's maybe distance, future distance, but for the traditional nuclear and SMRs, my only request is if we can get it at an acceptable cost, it will make my journey going forward, decarbonizing my operation, much easier. So I rely, hopefully, to see a more, more practical approach to push these technologies in the system.
But this would be SMRs not really on the electric play, but on the heat and the steam play.
Yeah, I think, look, when we talk a lot about hydrogen, and you highlighted earlier that there is a challenge with the hydrogen, I think for hydrogen, beside the government policies to maybe introduce incentives, the technology. And if we can tap into the heat or the nuclear, I think that's definitely going to help reducing the cost of hydrogen.
I want to get one more question in before we finish. I do think in the hydrogen space, the ratio of press releases to projects remains very high, so we probably need to do more projects. I want to ask you about disruption. Every major oil and gas company in the world is grappling with what you're grappling with, which is how do we be relevant for a future low-carbon world? And it's very disruptive because the core business is making a ton of money, but the new business is very different, has a different risk profile. And the place where this has really come down is capital allocation, is can you get capital allocated to new projects that have different risk profile and so on. So I wanted to close by asking you, how are you doing in terms of getting capital allocation for the low carbon and future part of ADNOC?
Yeah, we allocated $15 billion for initial allocation, and I can see only one side. I think we're going to increase that number going forward. But $15 billion allocated for the next 5 years in order to push more the decarbonization agenda and maintain ADNOC position as a leader among our peers when it comes to the carbon intensity. So because of what you highlighted, disruption is happening. I think disruption is happening in all sectors. It's not necessarily only the energy sector, but life sciences, for example, is being disrupted. Technology side, there's a lot of disruption happening around us. So as a responsible integrated energy company, we need to embrace, because we have two options, to stay in the state of denial or embrace these disruptions and include them as part of our business. So in ADNOC, we're very clear. We're going to embrace new technologies. We're going to be an effective and a key player on the energy transition. And we still believe that one of the best ways to generate power or energy still nuclear, oil, and gas. I think the issue with oil and gas are the emissions. And if we find ways to eradicate or remove that emission, I think oil and gas will remain, I would say, a reliable energy source going forward. So I have absolutely no doubt that disruption will, although maybe a challenge to the traditional business, but it could present itself as an opportunity. So we're investing on the energies of tomorrow, and I hope disruption will be part of that journey.
Well, deep decarbonization means deep disruption. Please join me in thanking Musabeh Al Kaabi. I think they want a picture of us.